But now we're on Daf Ayin Omid Beis with the Mishnah that again addresses the issue of a fetus in its mother's womb. But now we're going to analyze the sugya of Tumah. Behema shemeis ubra betoch me'eh. So the fetus died while it was inside its mother's womb. Vahoshit haroes yado, as we said before, it's the roa, the shepherd, who attends to the birth of an animal, and he puts his hand, stretches it inside the womb, vinagavo, and he touches the dead fetus inside its mother's womb. And the question now is whether the dead fetus has the status of nevela, and nevela is metame b'tumas maga. If you come in contact with the carcass, a dead animal, then you acquire tumah. So here the Mishnah records a machlokas between the Tanakama and Rabbi Yossi Agli. Tanakama holds bein v'bein tmeya, bein v'bein tahora toho. Right? He's not tameh, and it matters not whether the animal, meaning the mother animal, was a kosher animal or a non-kosher animal. It's irrelevant. Second, I just have to. Let me just see. I'm sorry. What's going on here? The Tanakama holds, and we'll see how he derives it from a Kal V'chomer, that the dead fetus in its mother's womb is not nevela, and it's not metame. And it matters not whether the mother animal is kosher or not kosher. Rabbi Yossi Agli Omer, however, b'tmei tamei u'b'torah tar. So Rabbi Yossi Agli is going to differentiate between a kosher animal, where the dead fetus is not an nevela and it's not metame, as opposed to a non-kosher animal. My time at the Tanakam, the Gemara asks, Omer Rav Chisda Kal V'chomer, Im ho'ila imo la tiro b'achila lo toyo lo l'tare midei nevela. And a fetus inside its mother's womb is considered part of the mother. And how do I gauge that? How do I prove that? From the fact that the shechita of the mother is valid for the fetus. And that's to allow you to eat the fetus. So how much more so would that shechita be meaningful on a somewhat lower level, certainly to be metayr midei nevela? Although it's true that the shechita of the mother is operative and valid vis-a-vis the vlad, but that's only in a kosher animal. In a non-kosher animal, the shechita of a non-kosher animal is meaningless. So how do you derive from that Kal V'chomer that even in the case of a vlad that dies inside a non-kosher animal, its mother's non-kosher, that it's not metami tumas nevela? Because halacha tumas nevela applies to a kosher animal as well as to a non-kosher animal. Omar kra v'chiyamus min habehema zu behema tmeya. Right, it says yamus. And yamus means that it died. Now, it says mina behema. What kind of behema are we dealing with? A kosher and a non-kosher? So the Gemara derives that it's got to be a non-kosher animal. Why? Because the rest of the pasuk says asher hi lachem liachla, meaning that you're allowed to eat this animal. It must be a behema tahora. But it's interesting that in one breath, and we're talking about a pasuk in Vayikra Yud Aleph, which is Parsha Shmini. In one pasuk, the Torah speaks about a behema tmeya and a behema tahora in one breath. Iskish, so we have a hekesh, behema tmeya or behema tahora. Now, to what extent would the Torah make an analogy comparing a non-kosher animal to a kosher animal? Ma behema tahora ubra tar, just like we learned from the Kal V'chomer, that the ubar in a behema kshera even though it died, it's tar because the shechita, the mother, removes the state of nevela from the dead ubar, is af be'emetmeya uber tar. Okay, now we understand the Chachamim, the Tanakama. What about Rabbi Yossi Aglili? My timer. So now keep in mind that Rabbi Yossi Aglili could accept the Kal V'chomer. And that would certainly derive the conclusion that in the case of a mother behema tahora, then the vlad is tar because the shechita, etc. But now the Gemara is asking, my time of the Rabbi Yossi Aglili, that in the case of a non-kosher animal, we just had a hekesh. What does he do with that hekesh? Apparently, he has another drasha that comes lafuke to undermine that hekesh and disqualify it. The Yom Kra, the pasuk says, V'chol holech al kapov. Now watch what happens over here. Normally, an animal walks on its feet. Because the animal has hooves. But here the Torah is saying that it's holech al kapov, which he translates as paws. It's again, I'm just going to use a marshal. It's like the animal is like tiptoeing like a ballet, you know. And why is that? Because it doesn't have hooves. It doesn't have split hooves. And that's mahalche kapov, kapayim. That's referring to a non-kosher animal that doesn't have split hooves. And what does the pasuk say? Because the Gemara only quotes part of the pasuk. It says, "Kol holich al kappa b'chol chaya luches al arba tmeim heim lachem kol anogeh b'nivlasam yitman al aref." That means if it dies, it's tamei tumas nevela, and anything that comes in contact with it becomes tamei ada aref. So therefore, Rabbi Yossi Aglili derives the conclusion that from a non-kosher animal, there's tumas nevela. Now, what does that mean? Does it mean the animal died? If the animal died, then of course it's mitami tumas nevela. The Gemara is going to have a whole derivation for that. But rather, it's a fetus in its mother's womb, and the fetus died. And the mother is a non-kosher animal. And yet, any contact with that dead fetus is going to generate tumor. And why? Because we can't apply the kal v'chomer, because we're talking about a non-kosher animal. There's no shechita in a non-kosher animal. So this derivation is going to undermine the hekesh. And now the Gemara is going to attack Rav Yitzchak. Let's just make sure I got the name right. Rav Yitzchak. Yeah, Rav Yitzchak. In many, many ways. And in each case, the Gemara is going to try to defend Rav Yitzchak's derivation, his drasha. But at the end, the Gemara is going to have a pig with a pig and so forth. We'll get to it. And the Gemara can't solve the problem of Rav Yitzchak. So we're going to have to find another explanation for Rav Yossi Aglili. Elameata, question number 1. Kolut b'mei para litame. Now, the word kolut means that it has only one hoof. It's not split. But you have now a very strange situation. The fetus does not have split hooves, but it's inside its mother that has split hooves. So the mother is a kosher animal. But you derive the tumah by interpreting mahalche kapayim b'chayahu, meaning that it has no split hooves. So if this fetus doesn't have split hooves, it should be metame v'tumas devela. And Rabbi Yossi says that from a kosher animal, the dead fetus is tar. It's not nevela, as an absolute rule. But here we have a case where even though the mother animal is tahar, according to your derivation of mahalche kapayim, therefore the fetus should be tamid. So the Gemara now reinterprets slightly the pasuk according to Rabbi Yitzchak, and mahalche kapayim b'mahalche arba. We go back to the pasuk, and the pasuk says, "Kol holech al kapayim," etc. Ha'oleches al arba. Now, what does that mean? Holeches al arba. It only has 4 legs. And the Gemara assumes that if it's a kosher animal, then it has 8 legs. Why? Because they're split hooves. So now when the pasuk speaks about mahalche kapayim, it adds that proviso that it's holeches al arba. But now this case that we're dealing with is a parah. The mother cow is holeches al shmona, right? She has split hooves, which multiplies the legs by 2. So she's got 8 legs. And therefore, the fetus is kosher. Not kosher. I mean to say the fetus is tar. Frekta Gemara, para b'mei gamal lo titma. Now, the gamal is one animal amongst many that has split hooves. It's not kosher animal because it doesn't regurgitate its cud. Now you open up the gamal, and what do you find inside? You find inside some sort of a fetus that looks like a cow, which means that it has split hooves. So the cow itself is mahalche shmona. But the mother, who's a gamal, does, just one second. Wait a minute, why does it say b'mahalche arba? Just one second. I got the case wrong. Let me get the case again. The case is that what? The fetus has split hooves.
Yeah, camel doesn't have split hooves.
Okay. I messed up. So what does a camel have? It rechews its cud? It has something, I thought. Maybe not.
Yeah, it just because it has this big white foot, it looks almost like it's split, but it's really not.
Right. But does it have one sima that it rechews its cud? That's I don't remember. Okay, anyway, I made a mistake. So the camel does not have split hooves, and therefore it's mahalche arba. The fetus that looks like a cow has split hooves, so it's mahalche shmona, and therefore we have a case of mahalche shmona, mahalche arba. And according to your logic, Rabbi Yitzchak in Rabbi Yossi, the fetus which looks like a cow, if it dies, should be tar because it's mahalche shmona. And yet, Rabbi Yossi ruled that if you have a dead fetus inside the womb of a non-kosher animal, then it's nevela. So the Gemara answers that there's an extra word here. Holech v'chol holech. Right? It's the extra vav. It says v'chol holech. L'rabos parav b'mei gamal. So we know that there's tuma in that case, because there's an extra drasha for that case. In fact, the Gemara called it b'mei kluta litame. Let's go the other way around. Here's a case where, according to Rabbi Yitzchak's understanding of Yossi, the vlad should be tameh when it's not tameh. Why? Because the fetus is in the womb of a kosher animal, but yet it is mahalche arba, mahalche arba. Why is that so? Because the mother kosher animal has only 4 paws, meaning it doesn't have split hooves. But again, it's a kosher animal. And the Gemara answers, after all, Rabbi Yossi has the kal v'chomer, that if the shechita is matir achila in the case of a kosher animal, certainly it should be matar midei nevela. So here, that the mother is a kosher animal, certainly it would be matar, the shechita of the mother would be matar midei nevela. But now we have the following question. This is the KT. This is the knockout. Maskif lora ba'ami chazir b'mei chazirta. So you have a pig inside a female pig. Lolitame. Oh, this is the case. Here's where I got confused. Yeah, because the pig has split hooves. So that means that the pig is a holech al shmona. And not only that, the fetus is also pig, so it also has split hooves. It's also holech shmona. And therefore it's mahalchi shmona, which is not included in the pasuk that Rabbi Yitzchak quoted, which is only mahalchi arba al mahalchi arba, and therefore it should not be taught. It should not be tameh. And the nevela of this pig should be tar. And we know that Rabbi Yossi declares that the dead fetus of a non-kosher animal is always tameh. So at this point, we have to put Rabbi Yitzchak on the side, drop it, and we have to pick up Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. I don't know if he's related to Rabbi Yitzchak, but anyway, he comes up with a different drush, mehach, that Rabbi Yossi, when he derives the conclusion that a dead fetus in a non-kosher animal is nevela, where did he get it from? He got it from a pasuk in Parshas Vayikra, the first parsha in Sefer Vayikra. And the pasuk says, "O nefesh asher tiga b'chol dover tomei, o benivlas chayet tmeya, o benivlas behema tmeya, o benivlas sheretz tomei, v'nel min v'oshem v'utomei v'yoshem." That is the parsha of Korban Olav Yori. Anyway, so what does it say in the pasuk? It says that the nevela of the following is tameh. Of what following? Of davar tameh, nivlas chayet tmeya, nivlas behema tmeya, nivlas sheretz tameh. What about a kosher animal? The nevela of a kosher animal is also tameh, and it was left out. V'chi nevelas behema tmeya metami v'torah lo metami. That's ridiculous. We know that if a kosher animal drops dead, then the carcass is a nevela and it's tameh. But rather, what is the pasuk referring to? We're not talking about the classical carcass of a full animal, but rather an ubar, but a carcass that's the fetus of in its mother's womb that died. Shebitmeya tameh u'b'torah tar. And why b'torah tar? Because we have the kal v'chomer of whose kal v'chomer was Rav Papa? Did I get the name right? Rav Chisda, sorry, the Kal V'chomer Rav Chisda. And now we have a source that if the dead uterus in the womb of its mother is in the host mother is a non-kosher animal, then there's nevela because this pasuk is referring to a case of a dead uterus. I'm sorry, a dead embryo in the uterus of its mother. So what do we do with the whole pasuk of Rabbi Yitzchak? Rabbi Yitzchak had a whole drasha, but we got stuck with the chazir and the chazira and all that stuff. But what do we do at the end of the day with the pasuk of Rabbi Yitzchak? The Gemara answers, he loved the Rabbi Yitzchak. We didn't have the drasha of Rabbi Yitzchak. Hava mina kule kida Rebbe hudiyasa. The Gemara on the next daf, on daf ayin al, which I took a peek at. And I got the wrong impression that's a very simple Amud because the first part of the Daf Ayin Amud Aleph, Daf Ayin Aleph is quite reasonable, but then it gets so complicated. I'm going to have nightmares tonight. Anyway, so there's a drasha of Rebbe over there on Daf Ayin Aleph. And the drasha of Rebbe is based on the fact that it says here in the pasuk that we just quoted, it says chayat meya or behemoth meya. Now, chaya and behemoth are interchangeable as far as the laws of tumah and so forth and so on, as we'll see on Daf Ayin Aleph. So why did the Torah have to specify both behemoth and chaya? And based on that, Rebbe comes up with a whole exposition to explain why there was a need to mention both chaya and behemoth. And therefore, at that point, we need that pasuk for Rebbe's drasha. And if we need a pasuk for Rebbe's drasha, then we don't have, a free access to the drasha of Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak from that very same pasuk that Rebbe darshans. Even though there's part of the pasuk that we could use for Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak's drasha, but once the Torah needs one part of the pasuk for a certain drasha, then that justifies the entire pasuk. Meaning the Torah will repeat an entire pasuk, even if I only need one part of the pasuk to teach me one chiddush, one din. Kamashpala. Now we need Rabbi Yitzchak. Rabbi Yitzchak is going to teach us based on his drasha that if you have a fetus that has only one hoof, and therefore it's a holech al arba, then it's tami b'tumas nevela. So that means we can't learn the hekesh, because the hekesh equated a non-kosher with a kosher. And in the case of kosher, the vlad is not an nevela because we're holding now like Rabbi Yosef. Tanya, let's just finish this up. Rabbi Yonasan was a Talmud of Ben Azai, and he turns to his Rebbe and he says, Namti lo. Namti means I spoke to him. LeBen Azai, and I asked him the following question: we know that if a kosher animal, which is a behemoth, like a cow, if it dies, then any contact with the nevela of a behemoth, even though it's a kosher animal, it doesn't matter, is metame. V'nivlas behemoth tmei metame. But what about nivlas chaya tmei shemetame? How do we know? I'm sorry, we didn't get to the question yet. And we know that a nevela of a chaya tmei is metame, but nevela of a chaya Torah, let's say a deer drops dead, and you come in contact with the carcass of a dead deer, Lolaman. We don't have a specific pasuk from which we derive that the carcass of a kosher chaya is metame, minai. Normally, so Ben Azai responded, Kol holech al kapav b'chol hachaya. Now watch the word bechol achai. It doesn't say u bechol achai. It says bechol achaya, how leches, etc. Now it goes on four hooves. Is if you touch its carcass, you're tamei, right? Till hariv shemesh. And that pasuk is going to teach me that kol chaya includes even a chaya tahora. Namtilos, so Rabbi Yonasan responds to Ben Az. He says, "V'chi nemar v'chol chaya." It doesn't have the extra vav. Hello, nemar ela v'chol chaya, without the vav. And therefore, what is it coming to include? L'mahalchei kapayim b'chaya hu diyasa. Right? We're talking about those that walk on four legs, which means that they don't have split hooves, which means that it's a chaya tmeil, like a lion. Normally, Uma Yishmael Omer Dovaseh. We have another scholar in town, Yishmael, Rabbi Yishmael. Go ask Rabbi Yishmael. Maybe he can come up with a better answer. Namti lo. And then Rabbi Yonasan goes to Rabbi Yishmael. Again, he comes back to his Rabbi Ben Azai, and he tells me that this is what he heard from Rabbi Yishmael. V'chiyomus mina behema. The pasuk says in Parshas Shmini, it says, "V'chiyamus mina behema zu behema tmeya asher hu lachem liachlo zu behema tahora." And then it says somebody who touches the carcass of either one of them, whether it's a behema tmeya or behema Torah, he contracts tuma because his nevela is lamad chaya. Okay, so far we're talking about a behema. The Torah says explicitly behema. How do you derive chaya? Says Rabbi Shmuel, Amadu chaya b'chlal behema, behema b'chal chaya, and that's going to be the whole sugya tomorrow in Mirza Hashem on Daf Ayin Aleph that chaya is b'chlal behema, and if chaya is b'chal behema, the Torah says about the carcass of a behema tmeya. I'm sorry, the carcass of a behema tahora is mitame, so too the carcass of a chaya tahora is mitame. Because chaya tahora b'chlal behema tahora, chaya tameya b'chlal behema tmeya, and here on the top of Ayin Aleph, behema tmeya b'chlal chaya tameya, behema tahora b'chlal chaya tahora, and the Gemara is going to go through each one of these tomorrow. And Ben Azai was so impressed by Rabbi Shmuel's drasha, the Lashon Hazeh Amarli, he spoke to Rabbi Yonasan and he said to his Talmud Yonasan, Chaval al Ben Azai, he speaks to himself in third person. What a terrible chavola, Rashi says, Liolam, for the entire world. Shalosh Shimesh is Rabbi Yishmael, that I wasn't Meshamesh Talmidei Chachamim, I should have been Meshamesh Rabbi Yishmael. And by the way, Rabbi Chaim Shmulevitz says that even though Ben Azai was that much greater than Rabbi Yishmael, but every Chacham has his own unique contribution. And if Ben Azai would have been Meshamesh doesn't mean bring him a cup of tea. It means he would have learned the style and methodology of Rabbi Shmuel. It would have added a whole new dimension to his Torah knowledge, which would have been passed on for all generations. Therefore, Chavola Hiliolam, that Ben Azai was not Meshamesh Rabbi Shmuel. Okay, then, this is where we'll stop for today. Have a great day.